Well, hey, welcome back to Ruck the Way. Gabe, good to see you again, my friend.
Hey, good to be back. And you can see I brought the shacket back.
The shacket. I did
So
not represent with a shacket today. I'm
I only
wearing
wear it on the
red to
podcast.
I'm wearing red because we're recording right before Valentine's Day. I'm sure this will
You're so
air
thoughtful.
after Valentine's Day, but I'm representing
There you
wearing
go.
the red. So hey, we have an interesting topic today, and as we were kind of looking at different topics, this one kind of came to the forefront, and we said, yeah, this is interesting. So what we're going to talk about today is sacred boredom. Interestingly enough. So Gabe, when I say the word sacred boredom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, man, those two things don't go together.
Ugh.
There's just, boredom. I don't want that. That's what I think.
Exactly. It's not a topic that like draws you in by its very nature. It's like boredom. I want to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. And maybe that's the point.
Yeah, yeah. And the sacred bit, yeah. What do you think about that? Like pairing those two things together, sacredness and boredom.
Yeah. Well, I think sacred's like being set apart for a holy purpose, right? Like,
Mhm.
so uh, for something like really unique and important. Um, and well, you wonder like how could boredom be something set apart um, for a holy purpose? And I
Yeah.
guess that's the question, right? What does
When I
that
think of
mean?
sacred, yeah, when I think of sacred activity, I guess I have to add that qualifier. I think of engaging or moving towards or doing something. And then when I think of boredom, on the other hand, I think of, well, there's nothing to do. So I'm
Hmm.
looking for something to fill a space that's empty.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, it's the absence of something, right? Like that's boredom is an absence of activity, I guess could be a
Right.
good working definition.
Yeah.
Um, which feels like just so counter to our life. I mean, I'll raise my hand, say counter to my life. I mean, we were just talking about before we got on the call, like, man, I think I have even said, man, I've been running like just since the first of the year with business, just lots of trips, like the last 2 weeks, like 3-4 trips in a row. And there's this, and then I think you do get like addicted to the pace,
Mhm.
you know, of life in some ways. I do anyway.
And Gabe, when you say addicted, what does that feel like? Like if you could explain what that feels like in your body when you're in
Hmm.
that space where you're moving all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think when I think about addiction, it's that this idea that like I need something external to make me feel good, right? Um, and I think there's a dynamic in addiction too where like you need more and more of whatever that thing is to reach the same feeling, right? And so when I think about addicted to the pace, it's like you get you get going, you start living at a certain speed, and there's just enough activity and you're here and there and like there's hardly time to think or eat or you're just on the move. And it is like the feeling is like there's a sort of an exhilaration, I would
Mhm.
say. Like it's an embodied feeling, of course, that feels good. Like it can, when you're in it, it's weird, it can feel like peace, but it's a momentary peace because like as soon as if you're in my example, like addicted to the pace, once you start to slow down, like that
Yes.
feeling starts to ebb, like it starts to go away, and then you have to like go fast again, and so like for me, like addicted to the pace is like if you slow that, then you don't have that same feeling.
So when this pace slows and you come to a space that's empty, where
Mhm.
boredom can begin to set in, what does that feel like inside of you? If you're an
Ugh.
addictive cycle, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
start to feel like whatever drug it is waning.
Yeah.
What goes on in a bodily sense.
Yeah, like a letdown, like like energy flowing out instead of flowing in. Fatigue,
Mhm.
um, malaise, a general malaise, you just don't feel like you're quite on, I
Yeah.
think, in some ways, or like not quite yourself, maybe
Right.
to put it that
Right.
way.
You're not functioning at a level that makes you feel alive.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word, functioning. Like you're paying attention to, yeah, my function, my ability to like navigate the world is somehow not optimal,
Right.
I
Which makes
think.
sense why
Yeah.
boredom would be something you'd want to avoid at all cost,
Right. Yeah.
because
Like,
that doesn't feel good.
yeah. How have you experienced that? I mean, it may not be pace for you, I don't know, but like we've all experienced that. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I mean, and we were
where-
talking about this, is that, we have this little device, this supercomputer in our pockets all the time
mhm.
that is able to deliver distraction
Yeah.
to keep us from boredom, and how we kind of live in this society now that pushes us to be constantly, if not on the move or constantly, working, it pushes us to be constantly distracted, to kind of to
Mhm.
move away from that space of boredom.
Yeah.
Um, and I was talking with my wife about this the other day. It's like when we were kids, before kind of the digital age, boredom was the kind of thing that our life forced us into quite frequently.
Mhm. Mhm.
We get bored as kids, and our parents be like, "Well, go be creative, go outside, go and play."
Right. It's good for
So
you.
yeah, it's good for you, and I think it is.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we've moved away from that sense where boredom can actually move us to places of creativity. Both of us were like, "Yeah, when we were bored, we got creative."
Mhm.
We didn't have instantaneous gratification to
Mhm.
distract us, or
Right.
easily distract us. So it did force us to go outside. Of course, I grew up in the generation where once we were outside, my parents would lock the door,
Oh, yeah.
and we
That's a
would
good
be
move.
gone until like the sun went down, and you came home at dinner.
Yeah.
So
Don't try
okay,
that. Don't try that now. Don't try locking the door now. That'll go bad for you.
this is an aside, but I just have to throw it in. I was watching a video, interestingly enough, about a Gen Xer responding to a video by a Gen Z guy saying, "Why do you people in Gen X always talk about drinking from the hose outside? What was wrong with the sink in your house?" And this woman who was Gen X responded, and she said, "No, what you don't understand is that the sink in the house was not available to us because the door had been locked by our parents. The only water that we could have was from the hose outside." So I just thought, yeah, that sounds a lot like my childhood.
It tasted
Y- y-
like old rubber, and we
Yeah,
loved
it
it.
did. It came out like hot right at the
It
beginning. Then you
did.
had to wait
Oh
for it to
yeah.
get a little bit cooler, and yeah, it tasted. How we survived, I don't know, but it was an era that kind of pushed us
Mm.
to be creative. So your question to me
Yeah.
was, what did it feel like for me? I think now that we live in this digital age, it's so easy just to kind of saying, "Oh, okay, I feel that
Mhm.
internal stirring inside of, I don't have something to occupy my mind.
Mhm.
I need to move to something really quickly to
Mhm.
make myself feel better,
Yeah.
to feel kind of that equilibrium inside."
Yeah. No, and the phone, man, that was the tipping point, I think, in the fight. If boredom is sacred and good for us, like the point where boredom became scarce, right? There was a crisis of boredom scarcity.
Right.
Was, I don't know when did the
Was it
iPhone come out? It was like
2007, I think? I think
something
that 7 or
around
8,
then,
about
which
then.
is, yeah, which, my daughter was born in '06.
Mhm.
So it's like that's an interesting thing to think about, like that, you know, our kids, like they were born into a world that was totally distracted.
Right.
Um, and
At every moment.
um, at every moment. I mean, now you see, you know, they call them like iPad kids. And sorry for anybody listening who's,
These kids are on an
if
iPad right now.
if your kid's on an iPad, this is like not, no shame intended, no
No shame.
judgment. Um, but just this dynamic, right? That like, this is what, I remember we had to put on a DVD player. So it's not like we didn't do
Right.
similar things. It's just the technology we had was the DVD. But the thing about a DVD was it was over. Like you put it in, and that was it. And like the iPad, it's just unending
Hmm.
source of distraction and entertainment. And
Right.
so you've got like little toddlers on these things, and so that's, you're like, man, what is that doing to a brain? Has to be doing things to,
It
at those
is.
formative ages much more than like even for us.
Yes.
um yeah.
So we were talking before we started recording about a study that I was reading that was coming out about sort of dopamine and addiction, and how, of course, the advent of the smartphone and then moving into social media, which comes along, what, about 2013 or so, with Facebook, and then which has grown. And then kind of the advent that we've seen in the last maybe 5 to 6 years of kind of short form videos, reels.
Hmm.
So basically, you can just keep scrolling from reel to reel to reel, and there's
Yeah.
this constant sort of dopamine hit in your brain. And
Hmm.
the threshold for feeling okay within yourself,
Hmm.
in like the pleasure centers of your brain, is getting higher and higher and higher with
Hmm.
the, yeah, the length of videos, the ease of eating like sugary foods and
Yep.
things that kind of give you that instant high, and how people are
Yeah.
needing more and more and more and more of that to get the same feeling, because your brain does try to seek an equilibrium.
Yeah.
So when you keep getting these dopamine hits, it is basically raising the threshold for that same feeling. And at the same
Right.
time, you're feeling worse and worse and worse the more you seek that out.
Hmm.
So it was talking about
So,
how it's resetting the hedonic center of your brain.
that's
Hedonism
it.
is about pleasure. So it's the pleasure centers of your brain. Now people are getting more and more depressed, even though they are constantly going after this dopamine hit.
Mm,
Like,
wow.
yeah, that's where we sit in 2026.
No, I mean, I think you're describing, maybe like, people say that like the mental health crisis is probably like the crisis of this generation, right? Like there's just so many mental health problems and issues, and not to blame that exclusively on one thing, but I can't help but think like what has shifted, like what has shifted in the last 20 years, and it's technology, right? It
Yes.
is our access to something that is stimulating our brain chemistry, um, in a way that like nothing in the history of humanity has ever done before.
Right.
And so like, what is the effect of that? And I think that's what you're describing is
Exactly.
there's something happening in your brain, in your what was your 10-cent word? Your hedonic, the hedonic
Hedonic
centers.
centers of the brain. Yeah, that's a 10-cent word. Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
interesting. This article was talking about, this is not to discount real mental health issues that need
Hmm.
counseling, that may need medication, but they were making a distinction between those kind of needs and this sort of constant need for the dopamine hit,
Hmm.
which the prescription for that really was to just stop it. I don't
Just
know. Do
stop.
you ever remember that?
That
Do you
Dick
remember that
Newhart.
video? Well, yes, exactly. Where
Yes,
he plays
Newhart show. Yeah.
the
Psychiatrist.
psychologist.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
person's explaining all their deep trauma and what they were doing out of that. And he looks at him and says, "Just stop it."
Yeah. I'm going to give you some advice. 2 words. You ready?
Yeah, just
Stop it.
stop it.
If
That's
only it
not
were
a
that
good
easy.
answer when dealing with someone's
Yeah.
pain. But the article was saying that actually, for the kind of the dopamine addiction, the way to actually address that is to stop doing what you're doing. And this is where
Hmm.
boredom comes in.
Yeah.
It's actively moving away.
I think like what we're saying is like we've described the problem first, right? And the
Yeah.
problem is like we're distracted in that, but the problem is actually deep because it's embodied, is that like we're distracted at a brain chemistry level, and there's probably like even the wiring of our brains is changing because of the way
Yes.
that we're using technology and the way that that's releasing the dopamine, and so we're addicted and we're distracted, and like the consequences of that um are huge, right? Like we can't
Yes.
actually live a life at peace. It leads to all kinds of interpersonal issues and mental health issues. And so then like, so what do we do about it? And I think like that's where you're
Right.
headed, is like
Yeah. Yeah.
like if we just leave it here, it's like we're like grumpy old men,
Grumpy old
like
man.
you know like
And hey, and in
kids
saying
these
that,
days.
listen,
Yeah.
it's not just kids. I mean, I will admit fully that I'm right there myself.
Oh yeah.
I find that when I feel that lull, it's very interest. I'm very quick to move to, hey, how do I feel that?
Hmm.
How do I get on my phone? And with me, it's more, hey, what's going on in the news? So that
Hmm.
that sounds maybe a little bit more highfalutin
Elevated.
than just elevated than
Yes.
just scrolling on Instagram reels, but it's not. It's the same thing.
Right. You're like, I'm doing important work for the world right now, kids.
Exactly. I'm figuring out what's going on in the world. And just because you and I like to hike does not mean that we're always out there, throwing away our technology and being in the outdoors. We live in the modern world as well. We have to work and feed our families. Um, so, yeah, some of the invitations that we're offering even to people here on Rock the Way,
Mhm,
we only get to do occasionally as well. So I just don't want
mhm.
our listeners to think that, hey, Chris and Gabe are out, in nature every single day, hiking on trails and living this incredible life that I can't even begin to imagine. No, we live in the real world too, and we struggle
Yeah.
with this.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd say like we're in the fight, And I think that's the key, is though, are you like, are you recognizing that there's a fight to be had? And
right.
then and then do you know what the cost is if you just like completely give in to these things? Um, so I think like before we talk about the remedy of boredom, something that's popping into my mind is like, I think like going back to the phone, I do think it matters like what is on the phone, you
Mm,
know? Like that we do have agency about like the
sure.
apps and things that we put on our phone. Um,
Mm,
and something I have done in this last season, not that I do it perfectly, I'm hiking up trails in the Appalachian Mountains every day, but this has been, I think, helpful to me to like reduce dependency on the phone, is like getting rid of social media.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I don't have social media, and I certainly don't have anything like that on my phone. But when you said news, I thought, man, I probably need to it'd probably help to delete the news app off of my phone too. Like just because it's too accessible. You're like, I
yes.
need to check and see what's happening right now. Um,
Well, and you think about how connected we are through things like social media apps and the news, how we live in this digital world where we're able to be connected in ways that humans have never been able to be connected before, like you
right,
said, in all of human history. And it puts us in this constant state of knowing what's going on in the world and then trying to somehow hold what's going on in the world. And who
right,
could do that? I mean, who can hold all the trauma you hear in the news every day?
right.
I just don't think our bodies or our brains or our souls were meant to be able to hold that.
No, that's
So, man, I
100%
agree with
true.
you. I think we do have agency.
Yeah.
We have to make choices.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what are those choices? And that gets into boredom. What is it?
Boredom, boredom, and the sacred bit too is intriguing to me because that feels invitational.
Yeah.
To me, that feels like a God who loves us and who's actually created our bodies and our brains and our dopamine centers and our chemistry and who's made us to experience pleasure,
Hmm.
cares about how we move through the world.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think about what C.S. Lewis said. I can't remember in which work, you might remember, when he says that we're like children,
Oh, yeah.
content making mud pies in the garden
Mhm.
when a holiday at the sea is being offered us. And he says the problem is our our desire for pleasure is not too much; it's actually too weak.
It's too weak.
And that like we
Yeah.
don't we're content with far too little pleasure. And so I think about the the issue we're describing. I think that's exactly it. It's like we think that, man, this is the best there is like the playing in with mud pies in the garden is basically, I think, phone in hand, right?
Yeah,
Like
phone in
that's,
hand.
like this is as good as it gets. This is, and it's like, but what if there's more? What if there's more
Yeah.
pleasure? What if there's more peace? What if there's more joy? And what if that doorway to that is this thing called sacred boredom?
Boredom. Yes. Interesting. I think that's in Mere Christianity.
Ah,
I
sounds
could be mistaken
appropriate.
about that. But yeah, that's yeah, because Lewis talks about us playing around with these things,
Hmm.
food and sex and these things that normally we associate with pleasure. But
Yeah.
yeah, those desires actually are too weak.
Yeah. The desire. That's right. The desire is too weak. Yeah.
So, Gabe, what do you think that invitation looks like? The sacred
Mm.
invitation to boredom. What does that mean to you?
Well, if it's sacred, I think it's like God must be the one inviting, um, which means he must be offering us um, the opportunity for boredom, uh, you know, more frequently than we are paying attention. And so that's where my brain goes, is like, where is God actually inviting us to be bored?
All
like,
right.
um, so I mean, as you think about your day, like, because this requires slowing down, right? Like even right
Yes.
now, to slow down and think about, okay, like where are there opportunities? Now I'm probably not taking them, but like where are the opportunities today, potentially for boredom to become this doorway to something
Hmm.
greater? What do you think as you think about your day?
Yeah, as I think about my day, I think about sort of little moments in my day. And I mean, by and large, I work from home.
Yeah, me
So
too.
there are opportunities to be distracted all day long
Hmm.
with things that need to be done in the house, or just to scroll on the phone. You know, I have certain meetings and things that happen during the day, and then it's like those in between times. That's when I tend to say, okay, how do I fill this in between time? Do I
Hmm.
go for a snack? Do I scroll on my phone? I think, I live in a beautiful area,
Hmm.
and I think probably what I should be doing with those moments of boredom is getting outside
Hmm.
and like touching grass, as they say,
Hmm.
and not even with a plan necessarily,
Hmm.
but experiencing something that's not digital, that's not curated, that's not heated,
Hmm.
the opposite of everything that the modern world kind of offers us on a platter. It's
Hmm.
For me, I think nature is an invitation to move into that bored space
Yes.
and kind of experience beauty. To me, that
Yeah.
feels like an antidote.
That makes me think about something I've missed in this season of the year, which is our porch, which you've said on
Yeah.
many times. And Janet and I love birds too. Our daughter says we're officially old people now because we have multiple bird feeders and like but we do, like, that's, when the weather is nice, like that's what we enjoy doing, is, to your point, is sitting on the porch and just watching the birds.
Yeah.
And there is something therapeutic about that, but there is a sense of boredom in that, of like
Right.
you're waiting for a bird and like where is it going to come and which one is it? And you know uh
So I mean, Gabe, what do you think that gives you when you see a bird? Because I've sat there with you at your bird feeders,
mhm.
and I mean, and for me, I love seeing the hummingbirds come up
Oh yeah,
because there are
those are
no
the best.
hummingbirds in Europe. The
uh
hummingbirds are a New World
yeah.
bird We don't have
I remember
any
you saying
hummingbirds here. I
that.
miss them.
I remember us talking about, can you imagine being like some guy in 1600 seeing a hummingbird for the first time? Like, what
You're
in the
like,
world?
"What is that?" So, when you see, say, a bird come up to a bird feeder, what what does that give you?
I think there's a sense of awe. There's a sense of wonder, which I think that's an interesting concept that,
Sure.
going back to the idea that like as children, we experienced boredom being children of the 80s, of the 70s and 80s, that like we experienced it. And that there was this a capacity for awe, um, I think is part of the invitation. Cause I think like when I see a
Mm,
bird and I'm paying attention and I'm like, I'm not on my
mm,
phone. I'm
mm.
not, I mean, I'm just, there's nothing else on the porch. Like there's no other technology. There's not even where we live. There's not even a lot of noise, um, and you're just kind of like honed in on this little creature. I mean,
It
to
did.
use the hummingbird, I mean, one of the smallest, frailest creatures, and yet an
Amazing.
amazing, amazing little creature, like they're what they do and how they each have a personality and the colors are absolutely brilliant. And the ways that they maneuver and the ways they interact with you on the porch and with the environment, with they fight with each other. Um, and you kind of, when you take it all in, you're in awe. Like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Like that there's a God who made this little creature who can do these incredible things and survive,
Right.
and that have a tiny little brain and yet have a personality that, really crazy.
I just want to point something out, something I'm actually feeling in my body right now, even as we're talking about
Mm,
this. It is that sense of awe and wonder. I mean, I'm not even looking at a hummingbird, neither are you. We're looking
yeah,
at a screen right now recording. But even
right.
the thought of sitting on your porch and experiencing that moment of beauty, like
Hmm.
stirs something in me that feels like an antidote to a screen.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's like
I
I
do.
can
Yeah.
feel it. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, that's beautiful." I long for that kind
Hmm.
of beauty. That
Yeah.
feels real in a way
Right.
that these other distractions don't.
Well, it's multidimensional. I mean, just
Mm,
at a basic level, right? You're like, man, to be in nature, to be immersed in it, it's to be a part of something bigger than yourself
yes.
and to experience something that's multidimensional instead of like something flat on a screen that's not real. I mean, to your
Yes.
point, it's a facsimile of the real thing.
Yeah.
And so it's giving you a facsimile of the feeling that you're supposed to have too. That's an interesting
Mhm.
thought,
Yeah, interesting.
that the real feeling
Yeah.
there's a depth of real joy. There's a depth of real peace that is more full, in a way. And so it's almost like the mode of delivery of the dopamine has to be, you know, is congruent with the experience of it
Right.
in
Yes.
some way.
And that your brain, I mean, our brains have been created to be able to differentiate
Hmm.
that difference and to know.
No, another idea I had on just kind of like where are the opportunities for boredom. There's this idea of, well, it's funny. It's a little rabbit trail, so indulge me for a second.
Hey,
Um,
I'm here for it.
it actually comes from um, uh, like military operational theory, which is like that when you're in a military operation, like one of the places, if you're the commander or the leader, that you have to pay attention is in the seams of the operation. So it's like,
Mm, okay.
it's the spaces of transition, the spaces between activities. Um, and I've thought a lot about, I love that word seams. Like, it's like a textile,
Yeah.
metaphor of like, it's where the shirt or the jacket, um, it's where it comes together and becomes the shacket is at the
Yeah.
seam, right? Where the sleeve attaches. And now it's It's not just these like disconnected pieces of fabric. It's now something that has a purpose. But it's the seam is also while it's a place of becoming, it's also a place where it's vulnerable, where it can tear
Mm.
apart. And I
Mhm.
think I'm just thinking about this concept of I wonder like in every day there's seams. There's spaces between activity. And I wonder if it's in the seams is where the biggest opportunity for boredom, like if that's the invitation, it's the in
Yes.
between spaces. And so I wonder like what are those? Like if you
Right.
think about that, do you think that's right? And then if you do, like what are those? Like what are the seams between things?
Mhm. Well, I do we've talked before about liminal spaces, and this to me
Ah, that's a
sounds like liminality. You know, the seams
yes.
of life are the places where things are liminal, where it's
Mm,
the in between. Like you said, it's a
yes.
place of opportunity that can be creative, or it can be a place of weakness. It's both of those at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
so yeah, even in transitioning from one activity to another. I mean, because I know a lot
Hmm.
of our listeners do this every day. They go into
Right.
work and there's a space where they're on the move to get to their
Yep.
place of work. And then they work all day and then they are on the move back to home.
Yep.
So those two spaces in between are like
Yep.
the seams. They're
Yep.
like the liminality. And,
That's right.
I would say for me, I feel those oftentimes with either music or podcasts, more
Hmm.
and more podcasts. I like to listen. And
Hmm.
some of that's not bad. Some of it's actually really helpful and good.
Hmm.
But I do remember times where I have been in the car and in between space, and I've chosen not to have anything on, just silence
Hmm.
in the
Right.
car, and to use that as a space of either like active prayer
Hmm.
or just sitting with myself. And boy, that's
Hmm.
hard.
So that's an interesting idea. Like, why is sitting with yourself so hard? Because I would agree. Like, that's
Oh, it's so
like
hard.
a very challenging thing. What is it about that that's challenging? Because I almost
Mm,
think we're afraid of. Because I think the question is like, why do we
why are we
fill
scared
up
of that?
these? Yeah, that there's fear, right? Like that we fill up all the liminal in between seam spaces in our day just to reduce it to a day. Like sometimes I think like we think too big about life. We're like, I have to fix all the distraction in my life. And it's like, okay, but like just think about today. And today there's going to be this invitation to liminality, to this in between spaces, where that's in the car, or you have to walk somewhere, or
Yeah,
you have to go to the bathroom. That's a
right.
liminal. The
It's a liminal
toilet,
space.
it's a liminal space.
And as we said
um,
before, that's the
yeah,
temptation to fill even that space with your phone,
right,
right?
right.
Isn't that
That
the kind
like
of the stereotypical thing?
right, that like we just want to fill it with
Right.
distraction of some kind, right? So okay, but like but we don't do these things by and large. And so it feels like, man, there's probably fear. What do you think the fear is?
Gosh, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think if I'm really going to be honest, sometimes that quiet space, what I fear is all the things that I'm able to kind of push down through the day
Hmm.
by all the distractions of the work.
Hmm.
Some of my own internal questions like, am I okay? Do I
Hmm.
have what it takes?
Right.
As a dad, am I coming through for my kids? Am I
Hmm.
doing enough? For
Hmm.
my wife, am I being a good husband?
Hmm.
Am I doing what it takes to make enough money to survive?
Hmm.
Um, all and that's not even that those are like present questions.
Hmm.
I'm thinking too some of the past stuff starts to float up to the surface then too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I would just say sometimes they're not things that I really want to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that the image that's coming to my mind as you're sharing that is like we just saw the Janet and I went out to I had a speaking engagement in Las Vegas, first time ever to Las Vegas. Not my scene, by the way.
Viva
Like,
Las Vegas.
man, what a you talk about a place of distraction.
Yes.
Now, I'll tell you a funny scene. I remember this could be like my meme for the distracted life is it's like 7 a.m. It's the day I'm like presenting. So I get up early to go exercise and like prep for my talk. And like we're staying in the hotel that's in the casino. It's all this one big complex where there's no nighttime. It's just day. Like it's, and I remember I have to walk through the casino to get to the Starbucks, which is also in the casino. And it's 7 a.m. And I remember like there's people in there carrying a cocktail with a cigarette in their mouth, and they're just droning, and they've clearly been awake all night, gambling, and just like you're just like ultimate distraction.
Yeah.
Again, no judgment on anybody who loves gambling. That's not the point. It's just like, whoa, we've created these spaces. Like this is the mecca
Hmm.
of distraction. But anyway, Janet and I had one free day in Vegas, and we decided to get out of Dodge. So we rented a car and drove out to the Hoover Dam, and so the image that's coming to my mind, I remember looking at that dam and just there's this concrete wall holding back a massive amount. I mean, I don't know how many like millions or billions of gallons of water, right? Um, and it's huge, but you're also like, man, how is that holding back all of this water for decade after decade? And that's what it feels like, is that like we're just, the distraction is holding back a dam of like destruction that like I just feel like, man, if I allow myself to sit with my own thoughts, the anxiety will just come crashing down, and like all the
Right.
things that I'm worried about that you named, that I'm worried about too. Like,
Yeah.
am I doing good enough in my career? I've got these personal problems. I've got this business problem. I've got this finance problem. Like it's all just too much.
It's too much.
And so the wall, the Hoover Dam, is the distraction of like, I
Yeah.
mean, this is the Hoover Dam. It's like, man,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
just, and it's, I feel like even as we're saying that, I feel that,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
like,
it's
man,
like
it's
when you wake
terrifying.
up it's like when you wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, all of those things that the distractions of the day have been able to hold back flood
Hmm.
in on you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that. I felt that.
Oh
And
yeah.
I lay there sometimes and I think, okay, I want to be able to go back to sleep, because I know that if I focus in on all of those things that are crashing down, it's like the Hoover Dam is broken.
Yeah.
Will I be swept away? At the very least, I'll be up all night. So
Yeah.
it's the desire, and I think in that moment there's invitations as well, Gabe. We're talking about the sacredness of that. What do you
Mhm.
think? What do you think in those still moments where, yeah, the Hoover Dam threatens to be broken, that God might be saying to us?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's saying, trust me,
Mm.
you know, um, and I wonder if it's that we go back to this word invitation, that like we're terrified that boredom, that if we drop our if we drop our defenses, which is
Yeah,
like the ridiculousness of it is hitting me as if I'm like, like this is, I'm blocking
yeah.
the
How
world,
how is this
you know
holding back the world? But it does. It
yeah,
works.
but it does. And I think we have this fear that if I drop that defense, then it's total destruction is going to come,
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
anxiety. But I wonder if the invitation is, it's an invitation of faith to trust in something we cannot yet see, that God's saying like, but I've got something better for
Yeah.
you. And that it's not anxiety that I have for you, but peace, you know? Um,
Right.
and that the boredom, if you'll just accept it and sit with me, because that's the other thing, is like, I'm not sure the invitation is just to be bored by yourself. And now I
Mhm.
mean, this is getting into the spiritual realm, but to be bored with the creator of
Yeah.
the universe, who's with you, and I'm reminded of Psalm 23,
Yes.
that, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which is interesting. The valley is where the dam is built in the valley,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'm terrified in that space, but I will fear no evil, for you are with me.
You are with me.
Um,
Yeah.
and if he's not with you, maybe we should be terrified to be by ourselves. Like maybe it is too much, but that's the invitation, is to be with
Right.
the one who isn't afraid of the dark, the one that isn't
Yeah.
afraid of the dam breaking. Um, you know.
And it strikes me that Christian spirituality that we're talking about here is not kind of the emptying of yourself. So then your
Mhm.
boredom, that you're sort of in this place of zero.
Mhm.
You're at, Christian spirituality is the invitation in that bored space or that empty
Mhm.
space to actually
Mhm.
meet someone.
Mhm.
Like you said, you're not
Yeah.
alone. You're actually taking all of those fears, which, hey, some of them might be, they're not unfounded. They're real.
Yeah.
They're heavy, heavy weights
Mhm.
that our distractions actually can't carry for us.
Mhm.
That we are to meet someone who says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Yeah.
That Jesus is actually there and wants to be there to be
Mhm.
with. And the invitation of the board space is not to be alone, like you said, but to meet someone.
Yeah. And to experience his, to go back to that passage, his goodness and his loving kindness. And that's the gift, is that, and it's interesting. I hadn't thought about this before, but it's kind of like, the experience of the hummingbirds on the porch is like a little tiny peek into what the invitation is really about, because like to sit and be with the hummingbird, right? Like to experience the hummingbird in all of its glory, right? To be amazed. How much more so is the invitation to like let go of the distraction so that you can be with the one who hung the stars in the sky,
Yeah.
um, and to experience him and all of his goodness and mercy, and like all the things that we long for, that we're searching for, that's the space that we're to find them, is in these little tiny places in our life, to just experience a piece of that,
Yeah.
um
Yeah. And if you want to experience the hummingbird, you've got to sit very still.
mhm.
You can't
Yeah, because
be
if you move, it'll
flailing
fly
your
away.
arms. It'll fly away.
Yeah.
It'll fly away. Yeah.
Mhm.
Such a
But
good invitation.
that's an interesting, paradox, isn't it? That like God, who is almighty and all powerful, is also like, you know, but we can easily, through our own distraction, miss him. Like his, not that his presence is weak, but our ability to be present is so weak.
It's so weak. So weak. And we are so easily distracted. But it shows me too his loving kindness of invitation, that
Hmm.
he will not force himself upon us, that he gives us that agency and is always calling and desiring to be
Hmm.
with us. Yeah, and if we take the time to actually pay attention
Hmm.
to see his beauty and his glory. I mean, that's what I love about the ancient Celtic Christians, is that they saw God's glory in those small little things in nature. You
Hmm.
know, they saw him everywhere, and they weren't pantheist or even panentheist. They really saw that God was separate from his creation, but his glory was shown forth in his creation,
Revealed. Yeah.
revealed. Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think that like this is the invitation of Ruck the Way, right? Like this is this is what we're all about, is like, why get out on a trail? Why leave the rhythms of life, for 3 days, or one day or a week or whatever it is. It's because like this is a protracted way to actually experience boredom.
Right.
Like there's boredom on the trail,
On the trail.
that just to get out, which is one of my favorite places. I know yours too, is just to be in the woods, on a trail somewhere, and be lost in the context of nature and thought and presence of God that meets us in those
Right.
spaces. But I wonder if we could leave, as we're kind of wrapping up, like leave people with like how do we do this? Um,
Yeah.
and striking me that a few things. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Chris, but like one is like seam identification. Like
Yeah.
step
Good,
one
good
is
point.
like,
What are the
it's just that
seams?
like where are the seams? Like and I think boil it down to today. Like where, whatever time you're listening to this, maybe you're filling your
You're
boredom
filling a
space
seam
right
space with
now
us.
with us, which is, hey, it's good, but it might not be the best. Like, but what are the other spaces, where that's like something I tell coaching clients all the time that have, young families at home and often struggle with transitioning from, a hectic day at work back home. And this was something I did, when Madeline was young, is to pull off on the side of the road or sit in the driveway or whatever for 10 minutes and just shut the car off and just be
Good.
quiet for 10
Yeah.
minutes, in that seam, and I think so some seams are obvious, like where you have to drive or you go into the bathroom or whatever. And some I think you can create,
Yeah.
like to go, hey, sit, don't rush in, from one thing to the next, but like could you take 5 minutes or 10 minutes and
Yes.
sit in the car or walk down the street or take your lunch and don't work through your lunch, like go for a walk, or
Yeah.
something. Any other thoughts on like how people
Well,
practically can
I
pay
hear you're
attention to
saying that
that?
identifying first is a good step. Identify the
Yep.
seams. And then in those seam places, make a choice. And I would just
Mhm.
say make the choice small. Make it a small
A
win,
tiny.
a tiny choice for a win. It's like coming into the new year with resolutions to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a
Hmm.
week. How long is that going to
Uh,
last? It's too big.
yeah.
Most people don't do
Right.
it and they fall off by the end of January. So make a choice for a small win. So maybe
Hmm.
instead of listening to a podcast in one of these scene places, you just be quiet and see what happens inside
Hmm.
of you. And
Hmm.
even if even if what you feel is uncomfortable, like you feel
Hmm.
like you need to fill that space, that's a good recognition that will help to
Hmm.
show you kind of where you are.
Hmm.
Or, go outside for 5 minutes and
Hmm.
focus in on a small part of nature. You
Hmm.
may not be in a place where there's a lot of nature around, but I bet you could look at a leaf or even a
Hmm.
blade of grass. I mean, again, make it small
Hmm. Yeah.
and see what happens. And then ask the question too, what's happening in my body when I do that?
Hmm. Yeah.
What am I feeling? What
Hmm.
feelings are coming up in me? And if that's positive, then you can make that choice again and ask the same kind of questions.
Yeah, and I think another little tool that's been super helpful for me in this season is just learning to breathe, which might sound crazy, like Gabe, I've been breathing my whole life, um, but slow breathing, box breathing is,
Box
and so
breathing.
if
Yeah.
you're not familiar with that, it's just a 4 count. You imagine an imaginary box, and so you're inhaling for a 4 count, holding for a 4 count, exhaling for a 4 count, holding for a 4 count, and repeat
Yeah.
that like 10 times. And what happens is you're actually resetting your nervous system. I think it's your
Mhm.
sympathetic nervous system, right?
Ah,
I think that's right. Um, but yeah, you'll feel it. Like there's something that happens even in 3 breaths. Like
yeah,
there'll be a noticeable shift in, and so that's a like if you're like, I don't know how to enter into that space without all the anxiety rushing in. I mean, my
that's a great
first thing
way.
would be like just
Breathe.
just breathe intentionally,
Mhm.
and see what happens, and don't think about anything except for the breathing. And that's the great thing about the counting is as you're counting those 4 counts, you're like that's enough. Like your brain will fixate on that.
Yeah,
Um, Chris, last thing, how do we encounter God in the seams and the quiet spaces? Like what are some practices to like not just stop activity, but actually like meet the Lord um,
Mhm.
in these spaces from your experience.
Yeah, well, I think there's different ways, and I think we're all created a bit differently in how
Mm,
we encounter God. Um, I would say kind of learning your own kind of sacred temperament. Maybe that's a podcast we can do it at another point. But understanding how you encounter God in His presence. But I think anyone in those seem moments when you're breathing and you're quiet and you're choosing not to fill it with a distraction, even if it's even a distraction of music. Sometimes saying a prayer, a prayer of invitation, of just saying, Lord, will you speak in this moment? I'm choosing to
mhm,
be quiet. And that's maybe where the sacred bit comes in, is just to say, I am humbling myself in this moment, not to
mhm,
fill it with me as best I
mhm.
can. What would you say? See what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah. I love that.
And
That's so good.
that's easy enough. I mean, that's
Yeah,
easy enough, but hard to do.
yeah. No, all the good things are simple but difficult
Simple and
at this
hard.
at this at the same time.
Yeah,
Um, well, man, this has been a fantastic conversation for me. I feel like I've learned a
this
ton.
is fun. Yeah, me too. I'm like, oh, I need to practice some of this today.
Yeah. Dang it. I need to lean into sacred boredom today.
Sacred boredom. Yeah. So that's the invitation, right? When boredom comes, will we allow it to be sacred?
Mm.
And what will come out of that?
And
That
as
sounds
we always
exciting to
say,
me.
that's right. Exciting to
Yep.
me too. And as we always say, let the walk.
Do the work.
All right. Until next time, everybody.